Thanks for tuning in. We're Ace Comicals. I have with me my co-host Rahul Jani and Leon Everett. I'm Greg Driver. Let's get started. Hi guys, welcome to Ace Comicals episode number 34, show entitled Infinity Talk. It's a special show in a deviation from our usual content. We're doing a movie, as you can probably guess from the title that I've given this one. We're going to be talking about the latest Marvel blockbuster to hit the cinemas, Avengers Infinity War. We will be discussing it in a bit of detail, and there will be spoilers, but this will be well signposted. And before we get to that, we have some other stuff we'd like to discuss as well. We've got some stuff regarding the Eisners, and we've got some Free Comic Book Day stuff to get through, with it being Free Comic Book Day next week on Saturday, May the 5th. So, I've got my usual suspects with me today. I've got Leon.
Hey, guys.
And I've got Rahul.
Good afternoon, guys.
So, before we get into much of everything else, what have you guys been up to this week, apart from hitting the cinema like me?
Pretty much the same. I hit the cinema twice recently. One was to see A Quiet Place, which is the John Krasinski directed movie, sort of horror thriller movie. But it was really good. It's one of those ones that works really well in the cinema when you're surrounded by an audience, and just people's reactions around you, and the necessity that the movie makes, where everyone sort of has to buy into the social contract of being quiet in the cinema, just because that's sort of how the movie works. Like it's like the backbone of how the movie works, and it's really interesting experience. And I'd highly recommend people check it out. And then I saw this tiny indie movie that we're going to be talking about in some detail. I don't know if people heard of it, but try and shine a light on it. But yeah, otherwise it's just me, man, just floating through space. How about you, Rahul?
Yeah, you bring up what is it, the social contract of being in the cinema. I too have seen that small indie film we're about to discuss, and I had a bunch of dudes sat behind me who were basically the nerd equivalent of football hooligans, and they were shouting at the screen, going like, and language approaching, but go on, Captain, fucking have him. And it was strange. I've never been in a cinema where people were shouting at the screen like it was a football match or like a sports event. It was mad. Have you ever had that before?
No, that is wild.
Yeah, never had that. I did have people that couldn't stay sat down though when I went to see the small art house indie film that we're going to discuss.
Well, that's part of the course when there's a film that's over like an hour and a half, because people have the tiniest bladders and no foresight. But yeah, I think one of the funniest things about the guys behind me is that they kept ruining their own good time, because the entire group at some point got up at least twice, and they had to keep crossing each other's path and like blocking each other's view of the screen. So there was some schadenfreude there about, like, you know, experiencing that they ruined their own experience a little bit as a group. So
I'm guessing they probably got drunk before they went in or something, maybe, or
I don't know. I mean, even if they were or weren't, it's still not cool. And the worst part about it, I think, is they were genuine nerds. Like, they knew all the stuff. They were super into it. They knew all the history. They knew like certain reveals that were coming up and certain things that were alluded to in the comics, because they were openly talking about it, or like half whispering to each other about it, and while they were bantering. And I think that breaks my heart more than it would if it was just a bunch of douchebags sat in the cinema, because like they should know better. They're one of us.
They just had no, what would I call it, cinema etiquette, no manners.
Well, nobody has cinema etiquette besides us. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I've been up to. So, yeah.
Oh my god, if I had the money to book out an entire screen every time I wanted to watch something, I'd also pay them to stop serving nachos and hot dogs, but that's another thing.
And popcorn.
Yeah.
What, you didn't pay for 40X? You get people rattling around in your seat, and like you get the smells and the sights and the sounds, all of it. That's what you pay for.
Well, I kind of had that with A Quiet Place, as the guy next to me showed up with his girlfriend just as the movie was starting, which is mega annoying. And they sat next to me, even though the row was fully empty, which was also annoying. And they had like They probably paid a lot of money for it because it was Picture House Central on the West End, but it smelled like the cheapest smelling Chardonnay white wine ever that just burned up my nostrils as soon as the guy sat down. And then because he couldn't, I assume because he couldn't scream out during the movie, which is quite a tense and thrilling movie, because doing that would draw attention to yourself, he could only express his anxiety and fear through inhaling and exhaling louder than the fans in the Xbox 360. He would just be like he was giving birth or something. It was so distracting. If it wasn't so funny, it might have ruined the movie for me. But it kept taking me out of the film in such weird ways, because I think like there's a particular sequence in the movie that people who've seen the movie will just know what I'm talking about, where I thought the guy was going to die. I just didn't think that he'd be able to take what was going on, because he was just hyperventilating almost. It was crazy.
Maybe he was going to die.
Who knows?
Yeah. Red ring of death thing next to you. Why would he sit next to you? Who does that? Like, if you know yourself well enough to know that if you're going to freak out at a horror film, you don't sit next to a stranger when there's empty seats around the rest of the...
Yeah,
well, I think it's because in that cinema, like when you buy your ticket, you get an assigned ticket. And I think they just were like robotic about it because they got in there late. But if they got there earlier, I would hope they would have seen, actually, the rest of the thing's quite empty. No one's coming in now and taking a seat. But I don't know. It's like, this happened to me on multiple occasions where I'll go and see a movie, and usually it's a fairly empty screening. But because it's been reserved seats, often someone will see you sitting there and be like, I don't need to sit directly next to this person. This is London. We don't sit next to people. We don't interact. And then other times they're just sitting right next to me. And I was like, dude, the whole cinema's free. Give me some space.
That was my experience this weekend. I had to suck it up and sit next to strangers. Like, the only time I'm ever willing to do that is when I know that the cinema's going to be chock-a-block and that everyone's going to want to see the movie, and I'm thinking, okay, there's no escape. If you want to see this before it gets spoiled for you, you got to sit next to somebody.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And that's fine if it's packed, but when it's empty, leave me alone, man.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're going to die, do it in a different row.
do it in the back, in the far left corner.
Yeah, do it in a row behind us, you know? It's like, stick to your own place.
And die quietly.
Yeah, it's a quiet place. Die quietly.
Yeah, and speaking of corner seats in cinemas, there's another thing that shouldn't exist. But anyway, we'll get on to the two items of business that we had before we get into the nitty-gritty of small art house films. We've got a list of nominees for the Eisner Awards, the 2018 Eisner Awards. We now have a list of nominees up, and some quite interesting ones on here, actually, and a couple of things that I think we have actually discussed on the cast as well.
So, before you get stuck in, for people who don't know, what are the Eisners?
So, the Eisner Awards are pretty much the comic equivalent of the Oscars, if that's a good way to say it. And it's where creators of comics, artists, writers, colorists, anyone involved in the making of a comic is celebrated and given their due for a really awesome piece of work they might have produced, similar to the way the Oscars works, where film creators and actors are given accolades for performing exceptionally and creating exceptional pieces of art. And yeah, that's pretty much what it is. It's like an awards ceremony, like the Oscars, but for comic books. And you'll often see like Eisner nominated logos and things like that on comics when you're buying them. If you've ever bought a trade paperback with like an Eisner nominated logo on it, maybe it's like a way of, it's like a seal of approval, like a way of marking a really awesome piece of work, I guess, and also a way of celebrating the creators behind that, and a way of celebrating the art form as well, I guess. Some of the nominations, you get things like Best Short Story, Best Single Issue, Best Continuing Series, Best New Series, Best Humour Publication, Best Anthology, that kind of thing. It's those kind of categories. And some of the ones that I seem to, like on scanning the list that I've picked out, we've got X-Men Grand Design which is the Ed Piskor book that we discussed, getting a nomination for Best Limited Series. Along with that, you've got Extremity by Daniel Warren Johnson, which is something that I've talked about on here as well. It's a 12-issue one that was published on Image, Skybound. And I'm torn, man, because I don't know who I want to win that. Even in that category as well, you've got Mr. Miracle, which is another one that we're reading. So it's Black Panther World of Wakanda's in there as well, but I've not actually read an awful lot of that. And I think compared to those other three big hitters, I'm sorry to say that it probably doesn't stand a chance. I don't know, because Extremity is like really, really good, and Mr. Miracle has been amazing. Like, we gush about Mr. Miracle at least once a cast, don't we? And X-Men Grand Design is fantastic. It's a fantastic piece of work, managing to condense a lifetime of X-Men comics into a short, easily digestible package that I think is really cool. In Best New Series, actually, I noticed we've got Saladin Ahmed's Black Bolt and also Redlands, which is something that I've been reading, which was Jordi Belair and Vanessa Del Rey. There's also other things we've discussed on the cast that have turned up here. We've got Hellboy Krampusnacht from our Christmas special.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which was Mike Mignola and Adam Hughes, and that was good. That's a contender for Best Single Issue. I think there's a couple of others in here as well. Just scanning through it. Batman Elmer Fudd for Best Humour Publication. That was the Tom King one, which was like from the DC Looney Tunes crossover stuff that they did. That was pretty cool. And I think that's now been collected in a trade. It's been collected into a graphic novel, and it's now I think that went on sale in February. So that's out there now, so you can get all of it. I mean, the only part of it I read, admittedly, was the Batman Elmer Fudd bit, because that was the bit that was truly awesome. That was the bit that I am always told is better than the rest of it, and that was the bit that I bought and the bit I read. But I think the rest of it is pretty cool as well. You've got things like a crossover with Lobo and Roadrunner, and I think Martian Manhunter and Marvin the Martian as well. Wonder Woman and the Tasmanian Devil, and Jonah Hex and Yosemite Sam, which could be quite interesting. But yeah, all in all, it's not a bad list this year, and I'm torn on some of the categories, because a lot of the things that are popping up I'd like to see win, but then they're against other things that I'd like to see win. So I don't know where I stand with most of this. I mean, what about you two? Have you two had a chance to have a quick look through it, or?
Yeah, apart from all the Tom King stuff, because he's been nominated for Best Writer as well, which that would be cool to see him win. I think not a lot stood out to me, apart, like, there's not much I've read from here. I think a book called Spinning by Tilly Walden, which I've read, which was really good, semi-autobiographical as far as I can tell. That's under nomination for Best Reality-Based Work. I'd say that is a good pick. I really enjoyed that book. And then a couple of things which I haven't read, but this, the whole part of the purpose of the Eisner Awards is to bring you onto things you may not have heard of. So there's a couple of stories in the Best US Edition of International Material Asia category. So Furari by Jiro Taniguchi. That looks really interesting. And Shiver by Junji Ito, which is one that I've picked up and is really good. So I'm glad to see that was not so much glad to see it being nominated, but just glad to see confirmation of my good taste.
Yeah, there's some cool things in here that I haven't actually gotten around to reading or haven't read yet and probably should. Things that we've been discussing outside of the cast, actually, like Giant Days, which... Oh,
I love Giant Days. Yeah.
That's up for Best Continuing Series, and I should probably get on that some point soon. And Black Hammer as well, which I really wanted to get started on, which is the Dark Horse one. So yeah, there's some pretty good stuff this year, and it will be interesting to see what comes out on top. Either way, I will be simultaneously sad and impressed for some of the categories, like I was saying.
I mean, it's one of those things where when you got multiple people you like in a category, essentially you can't lose, because like someone's work that you like is getting some love, so it's always good to see. My personal sort of picks, or ones that were like quite nice to me, were the three ones that Mitch Gerard's got, obviously, for his work on Mr. Miracle. So like Best Limited Series for Tom King, Best Penciler Inker for Mr. Miracle again, and best coloring for Mr. Miracle. So his work on that has been very instrumental for my like love of that book. So it'd be nice to see him get some love. And like some of the other ones you've mentioned. One we talked about on the cast before, Black Bolt by Saladin Ahmed and Christian Ward. I quite enjoyed that. I think, as Rahul was saying, one of the better things about when the nominee list comes up is just like when the nominees come up for any awards, especially things like the Oscars, it's like it gives you a chance to be like, oh, cool, let me check out some of these other nominees that I've not heard about or not got round to checking out. So a few things from last year, the items last year ended up on my list of stuff to read, and I quite enjoyed. And it's no different this year. So by the time the Eisners actually roll around, I would hope to have read some of the more interesting looking books that are up, have a better idea of who's in the running. Yeah,
definitely. The actual awards ceremony, it's a gala awards ceremony. It will be held on the evening of Friday, July the 20th at Comic-Con in San Diego. So you've not actually got that long, Leon.
No, you never do though. You never do.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'll clarify that my point. My plan is not to catch up on all the nominees because that is a fool's errand. It's just there's a few books that or like series that stuck out to me because I'd either heard them before, mentioned elsewhere, or I checked them out when seeing the nominees. That looks interesting. So it's a handful of stuff. I'm not trying to be comprehensive here. That backfired on me with the Oscars anyway. So I'm not gonna.
And it's going to be even. It's going to be even tougher with comics because with Oscars, you've got a 3-hour piece of film, up to 3 hours piece of film, usually around that sort of time to watch for each nomination, I guess. But with this, you've probably got like, in some cases, 20-25 comic books to read.
Yeah, it's horrible.
So, yeah. Well, it's not horrible, but you know, it's hard. It'd be a bit more of a mammoth task. So that moves on to our second item of business, which is Free Comic Book Day, which, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned at the beginning of the cast, is Saturday the 5th of May. We've got a list of what's available now. So Free Comic Book Day, for those of you who may not know, is a...
Free Comic Book Day.
Well, yes and no. It's a way of celebrating the industry, and it's a way of getting more people into comics. It's a way of showing people what's out there, a way of getting the medium a bit more in the spotlight, and bringing people into local comic book shops and sort of getting them interested in what can often be perceived as a throwaway pursuit by some people, I suppose.
Throwaway pursuit, but also quite hard to penetrate pursuit as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to know where to start. And yeah, like you said, it's not just the shops that are just giving away comics. They also put on events that, they have like painting for the kids, they have signings, they have, activities and stuff. So it's pretty cool. Like, it's a good way to get into the community.
It is, yeah. They as Ray is saying there, they bring guests in. They have things like face painting and all sorts of stuff for kids, and it's a way of introducing like the younger generation to comics, because some of the stuff that's available is child friendly, and it's a way of like opening up the medium and something that may seem impenetrable. Something that may seem like an impossible mountain to climb, this is your way in, kind of thing. This is a way for you to sort of get in and start experiencing the magic of comic books, and a way of celebrating the medium, as I said before. So we've got a list of some of the stuff that's available, that will be available on Free Comic Book Day. Also want to add to what I was saying, that the comic books, although they are free for you, the public, your local comic book store has to pay for these. So they pay for them and order them in, and then they give them out for free to you. So it costs them money to lay on these events. So and these are little independent comic stores most of the time. So please go out and support your local comic book store and check out Free Comic Book Day. Oh yeah, and while you're in there, maybe buy something as well. So pick up your free comics and pay for a comic as well. Grab something. Support your local comic book store. We need these places. So things that I've picked out from the list that I'm sort of most interested in. We've got from IDW Publishing Transformers Unicron Zero, which looks like the prelude to an event within the IDW Transformers comics. I'll read out the little blurb that they've got on the previews list. So, not a whimper, nor a bang. The end comes with a squall of entropy shrieking from the ravenous maw of death itself. The message is clear. Unicron has arrived. The Transformers lock into a desperate bid to save Rom's homeworld from the World Killer. But why has Unicron chosen this world on his path? Chosen this world on his path to Cybertron and Earth? The biggest story in the history of Transformers starts now, for Unicron's arrival can mean nothing less than the end of the universe. So, I'm guessing this is going to be a play on the storyline that we get in the Transformers animated movie from the 1980s, where Unicron, the world-eating world, decides that he's going to chow down on Cybertron. And I think this is probably going to take a sort of a similar line, because it's not just Cybertron in this one, though. We've got Earth as well at stake, and Rom's homeworld. Rom was introduced as part of the Hasbro combined universe thing that IDW have been doing recently. So yeah, I mean, that sounds like it could be pretty cool, and I'd like to check out the issue 0, the free issue, just to see what that's going to entail, because it'd be nice to see Unicron in a comic. It'd be interesting to see what they do with Unicron. Other things on this list, we've got another Captain America one. Avengers Captain America for Free Comic Book Day. Now, this, I think, is to introduce the new Captain America creative team, because we've got new writers for Captain America coming in. We've got Jason Aaron and Ta-Nehisi Coates on writing duties, and it's a short story, and it sets the stage for a new direction for the Marvel Universe, which is pretty much all you get from the preview blurb for it as well. So not a lot else to say on that until I pick it up and read it, but it'll be interesting to see what the new creative team can give us with regards to Captain America after all the controversy surrounding Captain America recently. Other things, there's the Infinity Watch Amazing Spider-Man Free Comic Book Day offering, which looks pretty cool.
Well, the one I was going to pick out, well, there's two. One called Barrier, which is the Image Comics. It's called Image Comics Buy Sell. I'm not really sure what that means, but this comic Barrier is by Brian K. Vaughan, and that's all it takes to get me interested, I think. So just the cover looks really cool, like blue and purple landscape, like in a desert. From the blurb from the website, it says it's an unconventional drama about violence, language, and illegal immigration with a shocking sci-fi twist. That sounds like it'll appeal to all of us. And then secondly, a comic that I've actually bought quite a few months ago and talked about on a previous episode is Maxwell's Demons, written by Denise Camp, art and cover by Vittorio Astone. That's a Vault Comics comic. They're a relatively new publication company. And this, I think if you backtrack to one of our previous episodes, I spent some time talking about that as well. So that would be good to pick up for free if you guys are interested.
Yeah. I danced around that one on purpose because I saw it on the list and I thought you're going to want to talk about that. So I left that one for you.
Thanks,
There's another one that I've just picked up, which is on Aftershock Comics. Aftershock being the people that publish Cold War, which is a book that we've talked about previously on the cast. If you backtrack a couple of episodes, as I say, as Ray said, you'll probably be able to find Cold War as well. So this one is a story of community, religion, madness, and the first planet to succumb to the universe's biggest paradigm shift. A weary space traveller arrives on a primitive planet lost in the Dark Ages. The shamanic tribe who resides there are unsettled and uncertain about their future. They rely on hunting and gathering to survive until the charismatic traveller offers a tantalising and dangerous solution. The Relay, a monolith designed to spread conformity of ideas, technology and progress across all discovered worlds. So that sounds pretty cool. And of course it's got Donny Cates' name on it, so...
sold.
Sold, yeah. Exactly. Especially where I'm concerned. Can't get enough of Donny Cates these days. And yeah, that about wraps it up this year for sort of like the big ones that kind of like glare at me from the list. Leon, have you had a chance to check the list out?
Not yet. I usually like to check fairly close to the day, so I've got a bit more excitement about what I want to grab. So yeah, for the time, you guys have mentioned some cool stuff, but I'm going to wait until the day before. Keep it wild.
Well, there's one I want to point out just because I love the title because it's super belabored, which I think maybe you'll be interested in, is called The Meta Baron, Book 3, The Meta Guardianess, and the Techno Baron. Techno-Baron, sorry.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a great title. I'll pick it up just on that.
That's a I wrote this caffeinated at 4 a.m. title.
They haven't even written books 1 and 2, they just went straight to book 3. It's a Star Wars situation.
In a Star Wars way, yeah. Another one that I'll point out for you, Leon, is there's the Brief History of Tank Girl for free.
Okay, cool.
Day. So, yeah, you might be interested in that. But yeah, that's Free Comic Book Day this year, so we're looking forward to it, and looking forward to seeing what I can and can't score this year, and what I managed to get hold of. And, enjoying a day out with you guys and watching some fun movies and checking out some interesting places in London and whatever else, which should be pretty cool.
Look, if we're following last year's template, we're not allowed to watch a fun movie, we're supposed to watch a crap movie, okay? So start thinking about what we're going to do.
Well, we've had a suggestion already, which is the second Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. I haven't even seen the first one. I'm talking about the Michael Bay ones, by the way, the ones that we do not speak of, the ones that reside in the black maw of some frozen eldritch hellscape. That's where I would say this is from. So yeah, we could watch that.
Well, let's discuss this later.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have brought it up.
So, anyway, speaking of movies, there was this, little art house thing that we checked out, wasn't there? So, what we're going to do now is we're going to start talking about the latest Marvel blockbuster, Avengers Infinity War. We are going to go into some detail. There will be spoilers, as I mentioned at the beginning of the cast, so if you've not yet seen the film and you don't wish to be spoiled, this is your point to stop listening. And then return to us once you've watched the movie and see if your opinion matches ours. So, if you're going to stop listening now, then that's Ace Comicals signing off. Go watch the film and then come back to us. So, guys, the people who shouldn't be listening have stopped listening. The children have gone to bed. It's time to talk about the movie.
Well, where do we start? Because it's a big film, right?
It is a big film, yeah.
Overall impressions from everybody. What did you think of it, Greg? Because you've seen it twice now, right?
I liked it. I did. I thought it was in keeping with what I've come to expect from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it was entertaining, it was good, it was nice to see Thanos on the big screen finally, getting his well, not necessarily his debut, but getting his debut in terms of actual decent amounts of screen time and a fleshed out character for us to see in front of us and things like that. I thought that was quite fun. So yeah, I enjoyed the film. I did enjoy it. In terms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think it fits in really well. And yeah, I mean,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say there are things about it that little niggles with it that I will come to later when we get to those points. But yeah, I overall I really enjoyed it and thought it was good.
I mean, you're just describing the Marvel template basically. It's great popcorn entertainment, but never without its flaws.
Exactly.
What do you think, Leon?
Yeah, I think it's a crowd pleaser, and there are some really cool sequences and really fun interactions with characters that you've been wanting to interact for a decade now, and at least in the MCU, but for some of us, our whole lives. But I think it handles a lot of that stuff really well, and the way people from these various different franchises are now sort of exchanging quips with each other and playing off each other and teaming up in cool ways during fights and stuff are it's a big fun movie. And I mean, I don't need to recommend it because the whole planet's going to watch it. But yeah, I think it's pretty much a solid entry into the canon. But what it has in crowd pleasing moments, it kind of feels a bit hollow. And it lacks the character of some of my favorite entries into the series, even like including the last two films that came out, Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther, that just have their own flavor and character and seem to be like spicing up the formula a little bit. I mean, they still adhere to a lot of the trappings of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I don't know, they seem to be trying to push the envelope and do something a bit more exciting. So, like, I think that this movie suffers that, where, yeah, it's weird. It's like, in some ways, it's less than some of its parts, which is a bit odd, but kind of to be expected in a thing like this. But I mean, I've got a lot more to say when we actually go into like running through the film. But yeah, I'll say overall it's a good film. I had a lot of fun with it while watching it, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again. And there's some moments that were just really exhilarating and fun. But yeah, there's like, I've got reservations in terms of how it feels, the tone, and sort of how the story progresses. Like, I think in some areas they just don't pick the most interesting choice in how to proceed with things. But yeah, overall, I had a blast. I had good fun with it.
Yeah, to your point about it feeling kind of hollow, and like you made a really good point about how more of the recent Marvel films like Thor have got their own flavor. I feel like as a consequence of how many pieces they have to play with, like on this checkerboard of like setting up this big climactic battle, that by virtue of that, it makes it kind of hollow, because like by having to fit in so many things going on, they have to have this really overly economic storytelling style. So even stuff like where the scenes close and when the scene closes and one of the characters makes a quip and then like it cuts really quickly after they've made a joke to the next scene because they have to save as much time as possible. That's how it feels. And like, I'm sure there's moments where those drawing out those final moments and like letting something linger are there, but you notice it all the more when it's not there when there's so much happening. And it feels like it's more direct and kind of less playful or witty in its pacing and its direction than previous films. Even the first Avengers film, I think the Joss Whedon Avengers film, because it was still doing this landmark, bringing all the pieces together, but it still had more space to move. And it's just a shame. I think I kind of don't blame them for having these problems with such a big project. But yeah, I left feeling a little bit hollow as well from it. But again, I still had a really good time. All the individual things that were happening were really cool. But yeah, I think we can talk about what the stakes are of it as well later, which I think come into play.
Having seen it twice now, I can concur with the sort of like, it feels bland in comparison to recent entries, like Leon said.
It's almost like they're ticking off boxes of things they need to get done, right? Yeah.
In terms of fulfilling the Marvel formula, like I was saying at the beginning, yes, it is what I've come to expect from the Marvel universe, Marvel MCU, and it's an Avengers film. That's its flavour. It's Avengers flavour. So if like Age of Ultron and things like that, it's Avengers flavour. It's like with being compared to Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther, it doesn't have as much style because it's all of them lumped together and everyone sort of, they're all drowning each other out, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so I think I get that certain quirks and certain stylistic choices that have been brought in by other entries into the the timeline and the franchise, so to speak, have been drowned out by the fact that it's all been brought together and everything's had to be muted and brought down to the same level for it all to fit.
Yeah, it feels like it's been sort of normalized. Talking about like sound editing, it feels like all the peaks and troughs have sort of been brushed out to be a line. Yeah, and I mean it's apparent. I'm not going to get into any proper specifics here because it's a longer conversation. But there's certain things here like that from the different franchises leading up to this that it feels like a copy of that, but it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like as fresh or as it doesn't feel as authentic as those characters in their own movies. I think there's 3 sets of characters where you feel this the most, but to varying degrees. But where like it feels a bit like a diet version of these characters that we got in their own movies, and it's not necessarily a big check against it, but it does seem like part and parcel of what they're trying to do with this film, and in some cases it works, and in some cases it doesn't work.
Well, I've got the sense following that, like I've got family who really enjoy the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, right? They don't particularly like any of the other Marvel properties. They just really like Guardians of the Galaxy, and if they came into this movie wanting more Guardians of the Galaxy, I think that's like they would be disappointed by, as you said, this kind of facsimile of the thing that they loved having been compressed into this film, and it doesn't quite live up to each of the individual characters that you get from each of the individual films.
Yeah, it's like Guardians of the Galaxy with some of the colours dulled.
Yeah.
The same goes for Black Panther and Thor Ragnarok as well. Like the precedent that's been set for Thor films now, for them to be crazy cosmic fun and pull in all these like awesome Kirby-esque elements and things like that, which is what I think Thor Ragnarok did quite well. Yeah, because it got like that cosmic side of things and whatever, and it's just been muted down, and the neon isn't as bright as it should be, and you know.
And you can see them trying because some of the dialogue and interaction between some of these things harkens to that, but it doesn't live up to the potential, I think.
Conversely, you can see exactly why they couldn't do it like that as well, because otherwise everything would drown out the blandness of the core Avengers movies. Because of all of the properties that they've brought together, of all of the entries into the Marvel Universe, I think this is one of the problems I have with it, actually, is when we start going through the summary of the story of the film and we do things step by step, it will become more apparent. But the fact that I think now, as far as these films go, as far as what we've learned and all these other new characters that have been introduced and all these better films, I think that Tony Stark is really, really boring. I'm bored of Tony Stark. I am bored of Iron Man. Right?
Well, it's been a decade, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm bored of Iron Man, and I'm getting bored of the Hulk now as well. It's the way I'm getting bored of Mark Ruffalo's Hulk anyway. But it's just so frustrating that because those two are like really that part of it. These these how do I describe them? They're like they were the beginning. They were like the first Avengers films, the first Avengers films, and the first parts of the MCU, going right back to the beginning of the MCU. You had Iron Man, you had the Hulk, you had Captain America, and those are now the bits I'm bored of, like the flavours that I don't want anymore. Like if you give me a multi-pack of crisps and there's Captain America flavour, Iron Man flavour, and Hulk flavour in there, and give it Black Panther flavour, I'm going to choose Black Panther flavour every time because I'm bored of those other ones. It's like.
I mean, I get where you're coming from because I can sympathize. I feel like I'm more on your page than not, but you're not representative of the audience at large. I think
Exactly.
I think people still really want to see Iron Man. People still really want to see, and they want to see Black Panther as well because that was huge.
Yeah.
But I don't know. People don't want to lose the things that they're fond of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. I mean, you mentioned going through the movie bit by bit. Should we dive into that now?
Yeah, because you've got a summary, haven't you?
I've been attempting to piece together a summary, both like from memory and like using Wikipedia and TV tropes and whatnot. But yeah, so and you guys are gonna have to like dive in and help me here if I'm missing out anything and like chime in when you want to mention something. But so basically the film starts with Thanos already in possession of the Power Stone. And we see basically a continuation of what was the stinger at the end of the credits from Thor 3, where Thor's ship with all of his, all of the people who escaped the destruction of Asgard are on this giant spaceship, and they run into Thanos' spaceship, and it kind of, lingers on that note there. We see the aftermath of their encounter, and basically Thanos has, as far as I can tell, either killed them all or killed half of them, which is his MO. His MO is to kill half of the population of the universe for the benefit of all. And it looks like basically everyone except Thor and Loki are dead on that ship.
And Heimdall.
Well, I was going to get to that. So in like rushing through this, Thanos intercepts Thor's ship. He steals the Space Stone, the Tesseract, which we've been seeing since... I forget which... Was it Avengers 1 that we first saw the Tesseract? The blue cube that Loki...
It's in Captain America First Avenger, I think.
Yeah.
It is. Yes, that was the MacGuffin
Red
in that
Skull
film.
has it, yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Space Stone.
Yeah, and so basically, like rushing through this, Thanos kills Loki, takes a Space Stone, kills Heimdall, traps Thor, and as Heimdall is, in his death throes, he sends the Hulk back to Earth. Oh, and Thanos has like a bit of a scuff up with Hulk, but like in the first scene that we get to see just how strong Thanos is, he basically beats Hulk down.
My first problem with the film is here.
Right?
Where's Valkyrie?
Where is Valkyrie? Yeah.
See, I had this, but of this sequence, it's not as bad for me because I've got a theory. But yeah, my first thing was, where's Valkyrie? Where's what are they called again? The dudes. What's the name of
the friends that Thor made on
on
Planet Hulk for one of a better term.
One's Mike. Yeah. But whatever. Like,
I mean, they might be dead.
I don't think they are. I reckon. I reckon some of the Asgardians made it off because I think it's like I'd hope this isn't the case because it's kind of crap to have the last movie before, no pun intended. These are the last vestiges. These are the last people. Basically, Battlestar Galactica. This is the last, and then to have them all massacred straight away off screen in pretty much the next chronological movie. So I reckon a bunch of them escaped, and it was Valkyrie and Rock Dude who
Valkyrie and Korg.
Got them away. Korg, of course,
yeah,
Korg. Yeah, Valkyrie and Korg who got them away. Like that's what I assume has happened because there's no way that they're dead.
Well, this is kind of a problem that I have with this film overall about walking back things that were really dramatic in very recent films, and like undoing them really briefly without much fanfare, but then giving stuff that's been 10 years in the making lots of weight, and there's an inconsistency in that, but I can point out those things later. But like we do get to see in this opening how strong Thanos is, and like this cool moment of Loki introducing the Hulk, and it's like, we have a Hulk, and then he smashes into him, and then you get to see that beatdown. I really like that fight. I thought it was cool. Like,
yeah,
that was cool.
Yeah, I did love that, especially when Ebony Moore, one of the Black Order, but the children of Thanos in this, aren't they? But like he's just like he tells, I think it's Col Obsidian or whatever. He just says, "Don't worry about this. Like, let Thanos have some fun." Yeah.
He It's Ebony Moore telling White Dwarf, I believe the name of the character is.
Okay.
Let me just find that and confirm it for you.
But like,
Black Dwarf. Yeah, it's Black Dwarf. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, but isn't he called Col Obsidian in the movie?
Yeah, they have. Let's have a look.
You've got Black Dwarf. Ebony Moore is the wizard type dude. Proxima Midnight is the girl with the horns, and Corvus Glaive is the guy with the
glaive and
yeah.
And you're right. Col Obsidian is the brutish guy.
Yeah, Col Obsidian. Yeah. So he has two names: Black Dwarf, Col Obsidian. I know him as Black Dwarf, but.
Yeah, but in the movie continuity, he's Col Obsidian. Anyway, the thing I like about that sequence is it's like I was a big fan of the Marvel Superheroes game on the PlayStation 1 era, and that had Infinity Stones as well, and when you got one, they just would appear during the battle as you're fighting, and you could like activate it, and it felt kind of like that when Thanos activated the Power Stone, and when it delivered that combo on the Hulk, and I thought it was going to bane him when he lifted him in the air.
Yeah.
But like, as cool as I like this sequence, but as cool as it is, and I like that we see the aftermath of this attack and we don't see the actual attack of it. I think that's cool. What part of the thing I don't like about this is I kind of hate that we don't see Thanos get the Power Stone / orb from Xandar.
Yeah.
From the Nova Corp. Like, it's just, yeah, that happened. Like, that happened. Like, of course that happened. It's like, and I'm not saying I need everything spoon-fed and I need to see it, but it kind of takes some dramatic weight. It's like, he's got one already. And I've got the Power Stone to make him powerful.
We had this whole thing where the Nova Corps were introduced. Was it Guardians 2?
It was Guardians 1.
Am I getting confused?
I'm not sure. Like, definitely in the first film, we see him, like, allegedly hand over the stone to them.
To the Nova Corps, yeah. Is it all blowing into one? After the dance,
so.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is all blowing into one in my mind. Yeah, so after the dance off, he hands over the stone, and we've had like this whole, other part of the universe introduced, and then all of a sudden, bang, they're gone. Like Leon's saying, it just takes the wind out of it a little bit, and makes the whole effort seem almost like the effort of introducing and writing these characters into the movie universe. It just completely makes that effort seem insignificant, even though it shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I think a way they could have alleviated this is that in a post-credit sequence in maybe Thor Ragnarok, they could have probably shown Xandar destroyed, and someone trying to get a distress signal or something, something to show that, because we haven't seen Xandar or the Orb / Power Stone since Guardians 1. That was so long ago that I know it just feels like such a disconnect. I've got that stone already.
It's annoying because they waste post-credit scenes on really throwaway things like the gags at the end of Spider-Man, where you could seed in that kind of stuff there. Like, that would be a great moment to show something that has a lot of weight, but you don't want to spend that much time, you want to expedite the amount of scenes that you're going to put into this film. You could put it into those moments. That's what they were designed for to begin with. But
do you think that it's a symptom of their kind of behind themselves a little bit now with writing, and things aren't written by that point, so they can't tease it because they don't know it's going to happen yet?
Maybe. I mean, I'm not privy to what their schedules are like, but you
don't know what
they would.
Yeah, that's a possibility, because the scripts are being written and stuff. But a lot of these movies were made at the same time, and it's evident in this movie, just from some of the stuff they do, that they know they've got an idea of what's going on. So, for instance, the Thor in this movie is the witty, clapback dude from Ragnarok.
Yeah.
And a lot of there's a lot of continuity stuff of the last movies which is in here, so there's a general idea of what was going on. The fact that don't want to jump forward too much, but the fact that M'Baku and the Jabari are a big part of this end battle is that's something where you couldn't really have foreseen how popular they would have been. So there is some foresight in that sense. But it's just weird how, in this sense, it's just for economy they just decided they didn't care.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because they let Guardians 2 sort of be its own thing, and because it's one of the first ones that's not in, like, it's not in continuity. Like, most of the MCU has been, this film happens, and that film happens, and time's moving that way. But I think Guardians 2 might have been, I think it's the first one where it's set before the movie that came before it, because it's set not long after Guardians 1. And I think part of that, by them I was really surprised that there wasn't any Infinity Stone stuff in Guardians 2. I was expecting it a lot. And I think that actually that's where they could have seeded it, because a post-credit sequence in that movie could have seeded, like, Nova, the Nova Corp getting messed up. But, I mean, it's not a big thing. It's just a bit, I don't know, it's a bit off, like, for me, because it's not media res in a cool way. It's just media res in, like, yeah, he's got it. It's like, don't worry about it. He's just got it.
Yeah.
He's just got this stone.
He just has it by this point.
Because bear in mind, so I was just going to say, bear in mind, like, the cool post-credit sequence from, I think it's Age of Ultron, where he's like, fine, I'll do it myself, and he grabs the gauntlet. That movie was ages ago. Like, this is years ago that happened. And
they could have done a bit more with the Soul Stone, I think.
Like, I think
to introduce that pre this film, because I think to introduce the Soul Stone pre this film.
That's a bit. I was gonna, when we get to that bit later, I've got things to say about that.
Yeah, I think we all have opinions on that. So at the end of this scene, out of the gates. So Heimdall, in his dying moments, sends the Hulk back to Earth, and we see Bruce Banner smashing through the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York. And telling, I got Dr. S, and I keep wanting to say Dr. Sherlock, Dr. Strange. He tells him about Thanos. He basically says he's coming and he's on his way, and he's this huge destructive force that we need to know about, and the plan, Thanos' plan to kill half of all of the life in the universe. So in doing so, they basically try to find Tony Stark. They find him talking to Pepper Potts in the park, and then just whisk him off without much warning to the Sanctum Sanctorum, and they. I forget what they talked about. See, so much stuff happens. I forget. They have like a whole chat about how they need to call Captain America, but he's refusing to do that because they're not on speaking terms after the events of Civil War. And they basically go into a fight with Morn Obsidian on the streets of New York.
Here's the first bit where it differs from the Infinity Gauntlet comic that. This sort of like one of the many things that this is heavily based on. I think this is the one that it draws the most from. Of all the, because I will obviously be talking about where certain parts come from if I know the answers to this as we go through. But so with the original Infinity comic storyline, which was published way back in the 90s, early 90s, I think it was. You've got in this movie they've sent the Hulk to Doctor Strange, but in the comic it was the Silver Surfer.
Ah, right.
So the Silver Surfer turns up at Doctor Strange's front door and warns him about Thanos and encourages Doctor Strange to get in touch with everyone else. Because Strange by this point is already an Avenger, or is already Avenger adjacent, and has worked with them previously.
Fair enough. I mean, the one thing the Marvel Cinematic Universe writers have done really well is to, condense those things and pick out the best alternative using the existing cast to tell that story. And I think it makes sense with Hulk because he gets smashed into the building, and of all of the people who could survive that, it's Bruce Banner as the Hulk. So I feel like that works with what using what they have.
I just imagine them having to hit a meeting room and have a massive session to try and figure out what they're going to do every time they hit a point like this in a book that they want to adapt or something. Just like,
well, I don't think they're trying that hard to hew that close to the original story.
They're not.
They certainly didn't with Civil War.
Yeah.
So
they're not. They're not. Because it's largely impossible because they don't own a lot of the characters that they need. But yeah.
Plus, it would be awful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would. So yeah, that's just something that I wanted to bring up just there. Just that's where it starts to deviate. I think this is just me being me and being a comics fan, but I do get frustrated sometimes when you know that someone's missing and you think, wouldn't this movie be so much cooler if the Silver Surfer was there? Or wouldn't this movie be so much cooler if the Fantastic Four were allowed to appear, you know? And it's just...
I have a different thing with that, because I only get that feeling where I think the adaptation has handled it poorly, and I think, oh man, it would have been way better if they just did, or at least took more influence from the book. But often the books are just so unwieldy and messy. I would hate that in a film, and like I would hate in its current form if like the Fox entities were part of the MCU. It would be such a mess. I'm so happy they're not part of it at the moment, because Fantastic Four, the X-Men, it's too much. I just don't. It would be too much. It would be the joke that everybody was saying about Infinity War, where all these characters are there for like and have like one line and move on.
When you start bringing the X-Men into it, especially because there's so many of them, it's ridiculous. And like to introduce like all these X-Men characters and give them all enough screen time and everything else, like you're saying, it would get to the point of like it'd turn into a farce, wouldn't it? I mean, some of the other stuff as well, like to start introducing like characters from the Marvel TV properties that do actually appear within the Infinity storylines in the comics. You end up with characters like Daredevil popping up and things like that, and all these like street level guys. And to introduce all of them would be a bit. I can see what they've done and why they've done it to streamline it. I can.
Yeah, because that's the thing with these scenes in New York. We basically only see three of them. We see Stark, Strange, and Spider-Man, and then the ancillary like Doctor Strange. I guess it's only the one character, isn't it? What was his name?
Wong.
Wong. Thank you. Yeah. And we basically get to see the four of them, and like we get our second fight in the movie, so we get to see Moore and who is it? Moore and Obsidian fighting Iron Man and Wong and Doctor Strange, and then also we get to see Spider-Man. In his cool little, we get to see his sidekick as well on the bus, causing a distraction and flinging out of the bus to go and help Iron Man, which is like, you know, his first heroic act, without really thinking of the consequences, which seems to be Peter Parker's problem in this film. Like the snowballing problems that he finds himself in. But yeah, he goes off to help Iron Man, and it basically culminates in them being semi-successful, but having Doctor Strange be captured by Moore because he has the Time Stone, and that's essentially what he's after. He's like, I don't need to kill you, I just need to get this stone from you. So he gets whisked off inside a spaceship. Spidey goes after him, and Iron Man, in his first act of trying really hard to keep Spidey away from harm, like triggers his parachute, and in the attempt to try and get him back on land, away from the spaceship that's like constantly rising up into space. Yeah. But he doesn't succeed. Like Spider-Man being stubborn, he uses the fresh new suit that we see at the end of Homecoming that he hadn't been given yet. As
the Iron Spider.
The Iron Spider, yeah. He puts on the suit. He can breathe in space, and he uses it to stick to the spaceship. And basically, him and Iron Man end up on that spaceship, away from Earth in a really one of the moments that this film gets really right on an emotional level, where we get to hear Pepper Potts talking to Iron Man again. Like, she's had to do this in the past, they've had to do this to each other in the past, where he took the nuclear bomb and was trying to get it through the portal in Avengers 1. We hear her voice comms crackling as he's trying to talk to her, and it's the first of many heartbreaking moments we get for Iron Man.
Yeah. Especially as for him, like, he was feeling this was a one-way journey, like going up there.
Didn't think he was going to come back.
I was just going to say, I like this stuff from when Hulk lands to when Tony's there, and I just love all the banter. I love Stark going up against Strange, and their two egos bumping against each other. I love the stuff with Ebony Maw when him and Obsidian first arrive. I love some of the stuff that happens during that fight, like when Obsidian gets like tossed and like Maw doesn't even move out of the way. He just moves him and lets him smash into some cars.
Or like splits the thing in front of him that's like barreling towards him.
And I love the fights and stuff, and like how Bruce trying to get the Hulk out and it not coming. All the stuff of like just the thing that this movie had some Spider-Man stuff that was missing from Homecoming that I really liked, and that was web slinging and Spidey combining with other people to like grab stuff and throw things back, and being like awestruck, but also like fun Spider-Man. I think the thing that the Russos really get right is their version of Spider-Man, and he's always a joy in their movies.
The Russos being the Russo brothers who directed this movie.
Sorry, carry on.
The Russos directed Civil War. They directed Winter Soldier. Is that correct?
Yeah.
As well as this new Avengers film.
Yeah. So, just a bit of a side point. We're throwing these names around: Corvus Glaive, and Ebony Maw, and we've not really. So this is like where the influence of a second Infinity storyline comes in. So one of the other Infinity events. These guys are from the 2013 Marvel Infinity. And they are Thanos' Black Order. In the comic books, they're a team of aliens who work for Thanos. And Corvus Glaive is actually supposed to be the leader of them. And he is, in the books, he's actually the husband of Proxima Midnight. So those two are married.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it feels different. It feels like Ebony Maw is in charge a little bit when you.
I like that the stuffy wizard character gets to be in charge.
Yeah. It feels like he's the leader in the movie, but actually, in the comic books, it would be Corvus Glaive would be the sort of like the ringleader of Thanos' Black Order. They're his children in this film, I believe. He calls them the children of Thanos. So I think these are people that he's treated in a similar way to the way he's treated Gamora and Nebula over the years. But yeah, they're pretty cool characters, and it was good to see them on the screen finally and getting into some scraps. And that fight you mentioned there in New York. The Doc Strange and the Doc Strange stuff was really cool with that, like the way the way he fought with the magic and everything. I really
and then like him and Wong, where there's the bit where Maw sends all those, he gets like bricks and sharpens them up or something, and then they send that through a horse. And
sends them at him and he sends them straight back again. So moving on from there, Ray, where do we go next?
Right, I'm only halfway through my 4 or maybe 5 page summary of this movie, so let's pick up the pace. So basically the end of this scene culminates in Doctor Strange having been taken on that ship. Iron Man and Spidey are with him, trying to get him, trying to save him, and Banner calls Captain America using Tony's phone that Steve Rogers had left with Tony at the end of Civil War. So we fly to Scotland and we see the Vision and Wanda.
Yeah.
And basically they're trying to have a romantic getaway, and they're attacked by I think some of the same characters we just saw in the previous scene. So part of Thanos' children.
It's the other two. The two went to New York and then 2 went to Edinburgh.
Right. So we see these other 2 attack them. And they're basically saved by Captain America and Black Widow and the Falcon.
Yeah, and this is where we meet Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive.
That's the one,
The thing. Another thing that I wanted to mention is by this point, Bruce Banner can't turn into the Hulk because the Hulk is sulking because he got beat.
Because he got beat by Thanos and just refuses to come out. Yeah.
I see this whole Edinburgh portion has some good and some bad. I do not buy Vision and Scarlet Witch as a couple, and it's just I don't care. Like, it just doesn't work for me. I don't think there's chemistry there or something.
It's
yeah, I know, but it's just for these particular actors and what we had on them on screen in the last couple of movies, it just feels a bit empty to me. And I don't know what it's not a slight on any of the actors. They're two actors that I quite like, but I just don't think it's one of the many things that this movie does where I don't think it earns it, and it doesn't really work for me.
There's something for me that feels a bit detached about it when they're supposed to be acting as a couple. They don't feel like it doesn't feel right. It just feels a bit like detached and uneasy.
I never thought that either of them wanted the relationship to begin with. Like, I don't understand why they're suddenly a couple, but them's the breaks, I guess.
I mean, they do show some of it in Civil War and Age of Ultron, but yeah, it just does. It feels like it just went to 100. I know there's been a 2-year gap since we last saw them, but it just doesn't work for me.
It's a thing they've shoehorned in from the comics, Ray. That's why.
No, I know, and it also I forgot my point now. It's also made clear that they're not like living apart from the Avengers. This is almost like a short holiday for them. And,
getaway.
It was a short getaway for them. But one thing I loved about this whole thing is Captain America's introduction, where we see, God, who was it? I keep forgetting these names. The children of Thanos.
Proxima Midnight.
I have to admit, I almost don't care about these villains. Like, I'm not that invested in them. Proxima Midnight throws her spear into the shadows, and shadowy fella catches it, steps into the light, and it turns out to be Captain America with his slick back hair and his awesome bushy beard.
Well, it's like the build-up to that is amazing as well, because it's a shot we see in the trailers, but it's the trains going by, and Scarlet Witch has just been like bouncing around, fighting Proxima Midnight. Who I think after Ebony Moore, she's got like the best voice acting, and it's not a surprise considering it's Carrie Coon, who I'm a big fan of. Yeah. But I think her performance is really good as the character. But they're bouncing around, fighting, smashing through the train station and everything, and then the train goes by, and then it's just they're like, huh? What's over there? What's she looking at? And then it's just badass beard man walks out of the shadows.
I love that shot of the train going by past Scarlet Witch. That's a really cool moment.
Captain Rugged meets Romeo and Juliet. But I mean, essentially what comes out of this is that they've been attacked, and they discovered that what they want, which they all knew, is the Mind Stone from Vision's forehead. And again, in broad strokes, Vision basically offers to sacrifice himself by having Wanda destroy the stone in his forehead to stop Thanos from being able to get it. And everybody else is saying, like, no, don't do that. We'll take you to Wakanda because they've got the technology to remove the stone without, killing you. Which is fair enough, but I feel like they should have discussed that option a little more. Because, you thought Vision would have been the one to discuss the whole point of the needs of the many versus the needs of the few thing. But fair enough, they don't spend that long on it before they whisk him off to Wakanda. They don't trade in lives, so...
Well, yes, he does say that line, which basically summarizes all of it, doesn't it? This is why we're going to go to all of this hassle and keep one element of a universe-destroying, entity.
What he's saying is, we're the good guys, so we're going to be good guys. That's it.
Yes, fair enough. I'm not going to argue it because that's part of the plot. So they take him to Wakanda, and then at this point,
before then, they do go to the Avengers complex.
Yes, they see Rhodey, don't they?
Rhodey and Thunderbolt Ross, and that's when they decide to go to. Well, that's when Cap's like, "I know a place."
Yeah,
and they go to Wakanda.
Yeah, right. And Rhodey gets court-martialed.
Yeah. All of this stuff that happens, as though it kind of gets brushed off really easily. Because I'm going to say, I didn't really care. I just wanted to see them move the plot along, which is also one of the things that I criticize about this movie. So maybe I'm a bit of a hypocrite.
I didn't feel like it had pace issues. It didn't feel like I was sitting there for 2 hours when I was watching it. But there are points where it was a little bit slow, where I could say, yeah, come on, next bit, come on, more space stuff, please.
Well, speaking of more space stuff, we get this amazing title which just says space, and we're introduced to the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they're responding to the distress call from the ship that Thor was on. And we basically get this cool shot of Thor smacking into their ship, and then his eye opens, and everybody's freaked out because, like, who's this guy in space? And they bring him into the ship. And where were we?
So he's on the ship, and they wake him up.
They wake him up. They have all this exposition chat about who Thor is and what he wants, and who Thanos is and what they're after, and where all the pieces of the puzzle are. And here's one of the things that I alluded to earlier, where you have the character moments and like literally the character of the movie of Guardians of the Galaxy, like that style, that tone, and the style and tone of the new Thor movies. And I feel like they try and bring that into these scenes where you have Thor interacting with Peter Quill. And Peter Quill's inadequacy and anxiety around Thor, and all of his companions are making comments about how buff and how strong he is, and he's trying to put on his deep voice and stuff. And this is where I feel like Leon said, it's almost a facsimile of better movies before it. Yeah,
it's where Drax is saying things like an angel had a baby with a pirate, and
but that's the thing is, I think, out of the three, which I mentioned three earlier, and then you guys correctly mentioned the three movies I was talking about, is that I reckon of the three, the Guardians characters come off the best, or like the closest to, because like at first when they're just on the ship, that did feel like, oh, I've watched Guardians of the Galaxy and I'm writing Guardians of the Galaxy. But then once Thor gets there, I do think that stuff is genuinely funny, and it does feel quite natural for the characters.
But it's when later on in the film, it doesn't come across right because the tones don't match properly, and they just come across as morons.
I think a little. Yeah, it edges towards that.
It gets that they're just irritating when they're viewed through the lens of regular vanilla flavored Avengers. It gets irritating.
They're trying to get the funny in, but then it's also very serious. Like the tone of the movie overall is very dark and serious. So.
The funny is funny, but in that light, through that lens, it's not as funny as it should be, or as funny as it's trying to be. It basically, you start to think, hold on, these guys are actually the reason why Thanos is winning.
Well, we'll get to that later as well.
Yeah, carry on.
No, go on. What were you going to say?
I was going to say this is where we get some stuff about Gamora and Gamora's past, and how she was trained by Thanos and everything else, and that stuff starts to come to the surface again here, because we've got Thor's on the ship, and Thor decides that he needs a weapon that can beat Thanos, and to do that he needs to go to a special place, because he needs a new hammer, and it needs to be forged in the heart of a dying star. And he needs to go to a special world to get that. And he takes Rocket with him.
Rocket and Groot.
Yeah, Rocket and Groot with him. And he leaves the rest of them to pursue the next stone on the list, which is the Reality Stone, which is currently held in Nowhere, which is a giant spaceport, which is where we had the Collector, who turned up in, was it Guardians 2?
Guardians 1.
Guardians 1
again? Damn.
And if we remember correctly as well, the Reality Stone was the ether from For the Dark World, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is, so the Collector currently has that, and they're off to try and beat Thanos to that stone, which doesn't happen.
Well, we get a long period where a lot of these things are intercut, so we're flipping between all these different groups. But the long and short of it is Thor, Rocket, and Groot take their ship to Nidavellir, I think, where they meet oh god, I keep losing all these names. They meet Peter Dinklage. Basically, they meet giant, tiny Peter Dinklage, giant dwarf hammer maker dude. They basically use their spaceships to restart this forge, to take all the energy from the heart of this dying star, which is a cool sequence. Like, I like the creativity of, you know, how Thor grabs the spaceship, whirls it around, and uses that to propel these rings around the forge. And then further to that, he still has to hold open the iris of the thing and, like, you know, survive the brute force of it. That's a cool extension.
Yeah, it's like super comic booky in the best way possible, because they just lent in to this cool, like, space, like, fair enough, do it. And it's like, they did it by using a character who's larger than life. And I think it just works really well.
It did work very well. And this is the bit that I really enjoyed, because this is when you start to feel a little bit of that Kirby magic. That comes from this sort of the old Thor comics and everything else.
Yeah, definitely.
The cosmic stuff. And this is the bit that I really enjoyed. I loved this section. And the name of the character, by the way, Ray, is Eitri.
Eitri, thank you. Yeah.
Eitri, yeah. So
I mean, I don't need to know that it's Eitri. It's Peter Dinklage. He's awesome.
Yeah, it's Peter Dinklage.
And he's awesome in this role as well. I like that they've taken... There's, like, so much meta going on in that he's called a dwarf in the story. Yeah. But he's a giant, but he's, you know, his proportions are different, and is played by Peter Dinklage, who's famously a small person, but he's playing a giant dwarf. Like, it's this whole cool thing. I loved it. Here's a thing that they could have had in a post-credit scene somewhere, would be Peter Dinklage being forced to make the gauntlet, and then having his hands encased in metal.
See, that I don't mind too much about, because I think it's quite economical for that stuff to have happened off screen. But it does make me think that the problem with, because I don't know if I said it on the pod before, but I don't like the first two Thor films, and I think the second movie, had that been a better movie, could have been the place to properly explore all the Thor mythos. Beyond just going to Greenwich and fighting Doctor Who. I think like they could have done something really, really fun and explored more of the sort of Norse through the lens of Marvel Comics reality of the Thor world. I think that's where we could have got a lot of that stuff, and they could have introduced the dwarfs pre Thanos destruction.
It was a wasted opportunity. Was Thor 2, I think.
Well, yeah.
But I don't want to like spend too much on this point, especially because it happened in a previous movie, in a bad movie. But why? Like, I understand why the Guardians gave the Power Stone to Novacorp. That makes sense. I understand why the Asgardians wanted to split the Tesseract, the Reality Stone, and the not Reality Stone, Space Stone, and the Ether, the Reality Stone. But why did they give it to the Collector? Like, how is he going to protect it in any way?
Oh, I don't know.
Because clearly he didn't.
Like, location I get, because nowhere seems to be quite, like, literally nowhere.
Yeah, but, pretty much, yeah.
But why him? Like, how is he going to protect it at all? It makes no sense to me. But anyway, yeah, it's just I don't really like getting hung up on like small narrative hiccups, because really it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of stuff. But that is a bit annoying.
Yeah,
but that's the thing with these movies, though. Like, because in trying to explain what's happening scene by scene, I keep ending up saying, well, the long and short of it is, in summary, the whole point of this scene was to bring you here, and it feels like these movies are made of those moments. Of it's just like it's almost inconsequential in the long run, because it's always leading to something bigger in the next thing. So you kind of can't help but nitpick those small moments, because it's like, well, everything's led up to this point, so why would they do this? So I agree with you. I don't really have a good answer to that, but it is frustrating. Yeah.
So we've got this whole awesome moment where we're kind of like flicking back and forth now, but we'll describe this moment first, where Thor helps restart the forge and create himself a new weapon that is powerful enough to hopefully slay Thanos. After when this is like one of the best parts of the movie for me, and this is why Thor for me comes off as the best of the original Avengers, as it were. Like he's the only one that I think is actually worth his salt now. As far like in this film, he's the best one, and he comes off as the best one, and he's the only one I'm excited about anymore, basically. But yeah, so this bit with Thor's great. We get as well, while this is happening, you've got the guys over in nowhere, and it turns out that Thanos already has the Reality Stone, and he's bent reality to his will, and he's created this whole charade where he's made Gamora think that she's killed him, but in fact she hasn't, and he's like, ha ha ha, here I am. And he lays the beat down. He turns. I like this bit, what he does with the Reality Stone, because that's very, very comic booky, very Marvel comic booky.
We get the first display of that crazy power.
It was horrific.
Yeah. Well, he cubes Drax and he spiralizes Mantis. It's awesome.
turns her into courgette.
Yeah.
So he then takes Gamora, and previous to this, we've got Gamora has sort of told Peter Quill has made a promise that because she knows where the Soul Stone is, to stop Thanos from getting the Soul Stone, if Thanos should take Gamora, then Star-Lord should kill her. Yeah, Star-Lord should kill her. And he's reluctantly going through with this promise. It's really difficult for him, and he pulls the trigger and bubbles come out because of the Reality Stone.
Okay, so at this point, I want to talk about a couple of earned moments and unearned moments. Yep. So the moment where we see Gamora kill Thanos, but it all turns out to be a charade that he's put on using the Reality Stone. Yeah. I feel like that worked. In context, that worked for me a lot, because I guess you don't know as an audience, and you don't know as the characters, that he's pulled this charade. And so when the reveal comes and it's like, oh, of course it's the Reality Stone, it doesn't feel cheap. It feels like, well, to me at least, it felt like we got to have our cake and eat it a little bit. Yeah. But then I feel like the unearned moment is because they seeded in this thing, like in a couple of scenes before, where she tells Peter Quill, I've got this secret, and if Thanos takes me, you have to kill me. And it's this whole heartfelt moment of like him making this ultimate promise, and then literally like 15 minutes later he has to go through with it. I didn't feel like that worked for me at all. And also because the way the scene is shot and paced, it's like they're having this conversation while Thanos has his hand around her throat, essentially. And it's like, we know that Thanos knows that he's going to try and pull the trigger, but he's going to do something. So kind of like all of the tension comes from how is Thanos going to, like, what thing is Thanos going to do to stop the bullet from coming out? Because there's no way that she's going to die in that scene. Like, we all knew it, right?
Because he needs her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
also, sorry. No, I was just going to say, with that sequence, as you say, like that part just doesn't work, and especially it's one of those annoying tension things where it's like the nuke's about to blow up, but we're going to have a kiss or something like that. Not in the same way, but it's one of the things where he's right there, man. He's like, even if he didn't have the Reality Stone, he's not going to let you do this. He's going to move at the last second, grab. So it kind of just like flushes away the tension of that sequence. Yeah. But what I did really like is just before, where she like faux kills Thanos, which you just know when watching it that it just feels off. But you're wondering what the trick is, and you completely forget about the Reality Stone. So I think it's well done. It's her crying after she's done it. Like, I do not buy the do not care for, or it's not been displayed well, the mother-daughter relationship of it. But that one moment where she's crying about it after she's killed, and the conflictedness, I felt that worked really well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Then, so moving ahead from that, we're back on Thanos' ship, and he's got Gamora, and he's asking her where the Soul Stone is, and she's pretending she doesn't know, and it's a very Vader and Leia moment. But
then he tries to tease it out of her by torturing Nebula. In a cool scene where we're like, I wonder how this would have played out in 3D, because the camera is face on, and we get the impression that she's just floating in midair, but then the camera pans around and we see that she's been pulled apart, all her individual components have been stretched out.
I watched it once in 3D and once in 2D. So when I saw that in 3D, I I'm trying to remember, because the 3D was actually used quite well in some parts of this film, I must say. It's not one of those films where 3D is an afterthought. They did things purely for the 3D. But, like, the way that is in 3D, I'm trying to remember. I don't think it comes out of the screen like you would want it to, but it looks really cool with all the components laid out. And when he pans round her and you think she's in one piece, then all of a sudden she's not, because of the trick of the camera. The trick of the optical illusion, where when you look at her from a certain angle, it looks like she's still in one piece, and then you see her from a side on, and she's all pulled out into various separate components. And that is actually, like, keeping her in that state and then torturing her is actually kind of a nod, I think, to in the Infinity Gauntlet comics, where he's got Nebula in a permanent state or between life and death in permanent pain.
It's a cool way to do it.
Yeah.
It's an effective moment, I think.
Yeah. And, he gets the location of the Soul Stone out of Gamora, because Gamora can't stand to see her sister suffering.
Which I thought was mega lame.
It is super lame. I've got a big note in red here saying the Guardians of the Galaxy crew suck, as we'll find out later.
Yep.
So Gamora here, and then there's a moment with Peter Quill later.
Yep.
But yeah, that sucks that she gave it up so easily, and that, like...
Yeah.
Especially because, I know we're going to jump to the next scene, but, like, I thought, like, okay, there's a plan. There was no plan.
There was no plan, yep.
So now...
And I'd forgotten that there was no plan at the time when there should have been a plan, you know? Yeah, anyway, continue.
So now we're on to we're getting to retrieving the Soul Stone. So Thanos has 3 stones. He's about to get his 4th. He goes to the planet where the Soul Stone is kept.
Vormir, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
And because Gamora is the only one who knows where it is, she's his guide, and they march up to the top of the mountain, and there's this pretty Lord of the Rings ring wraithy moment.
Yeah.
And the hood comes down, and it's the Red Skull! Where the hell did that come from? so the Red Skull is...
No, just I was going to say I couldn't have cared less about that reveal.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there were people gasping in the cinema like, Red Skull! And I was like, oh, Red Skull?
Yeah, I was like,
all right.
That's mega lame. Of all people, why the Red Skull to put him all the way out there? That's just... Ugh.
I guess there's some irony to it being that the one thing you need to... As we'll find out we'll talk about it in a second. We might as well talk about it now. The thing that Thanos needs to do to be able to retrieve this stone is to sacrifice somebody that he loves. And I guess there's an irony in the Red Skull being there alone, not having anybody to love to sacrifice to be able to get an Infinity Stone, which is what he wanted in Captain America, the First Avenger. It's
also a squandered opportunity, because they could have introduced some awesome cosmic being for that planet to preside over the Soul Stone, and they didn't. And we get to the top of the mountain, and this is a big red flag for me. This is Thanos giving a shit. That's a red flag for me.
Well, the thing is, I think they sell it more in the film, but like, I think that's what Gamora's plan was. Was like she I don't know if she knew. Let's assume she knew what the terms would be. But then she's all making fun of him and saying like blah blah. And it's like, oh, come on! Like, it's obvious. Like,
it's obvious he loves you like a daughter. Like, that was never in doubt. Why was that ever in doubt in her mind?
But the way he treats her in the film is so different to the way she's treated in the comics. Like, when he finds her as a child, and he's like talking about balance, and he gives her the knife and everything. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. His motivation is slightly different in this movie than it is in the comics as well, because although he's still trying to achieve a balance in the comics, he's doing it on behalf of Death, because Death wants him to do it.
Mistress Death,
yeah. Not because he's doing it out of his own kind of twisted sense of right
justice
and
wrong.
Justice
and morality, yeah.
And he didn't destroy his own planet in this like he did in the comics. In the comics, he destroyed Titan. It's him.
Right.
And he's not the son of Eros. Eros is his brother. But yeah. Which comes up in this scene because they call him the son of Eros. But I think Eros is his brother in the comics. Eros is another person from Titan.
Well, the long and short of it in here, then, is that he... to Gamora's surprise, for some reason, he throws her off the cliff and retrieves the Soul Stone. And we get this kind of cool, dreamlike moment where he he like walks up to a representation of like young Gamora as you know, as he found her as a child. I can't exactly remember what happened in that scene, but do either of you guys remember?
That's later on where she's like, was it worth it?
Yeah, that's later on. In this thing,
okay.
doesn't he wake up in the water and it's in his hands?
He wakes up in the water and he's got the Soul Stone after chucking her off the mountain and
I
having a cry.
I have to say, everything to do with the Soul Stone in this movie sucks.
Yeah,
The Soul Stone is a prime thing where people have been theorizing for forever about, like, where is it? And has it been in plain sight? Is it in Heimdall's eyes? Is it under Wakanda? Where all this stuff. And fair enough, it's not all those things. That's speculation. That's how that works. But the fact that all speculation is better than what they do in the movie, where it just becomes this crap Ready Player One gate challenge, and he's just like, oh, do the thing, and like, you wake up with the stone in your hand. I hate that, and I hate everything to do with this. Like, I hate the fact that the Soul Stone wasn't seeded in like an earlier movie or anything like that.
I don't like the fact that Thanos has a heart and warm blood.
I hate the fact that it's just this crap RPG tabletop BS.
Yeah,
like who? I mean, there probably was someone to do this, but like when the Tesseract put Red Skull there, who said like, yeah. Be a ring wraith for us, and here's all the plans to it, and you can be the guide for when one person comes in like 100 years time or something like that. It's like, so lame. I hate everything about the Soul Stone.
Someone in the writers' room piped up and went, "Have you ever seen that really old movie, Lord of the Rings?"
Well, I mean, I'll have to agree with both of you. I thought that sucked, and it's a shame. Like you said, you can't blame them based on that. Like, this is the problem with listening to all the theories and all that theorizing, because people will always come up with infinitely cooler, or will often come up with infinitely cooler stories than will actually be given in the movies. And that's one of those instances where it felt like watching Lost or something, where, you know, thinking about it for so many years has kind of ruined it for all of us, and all they've come up with is this kind of bland, like you said, RPG, press A or press B moment. Yeah. And he decides to throw his daughter off the cliff and he gets a stone because of it.
It's very God of War.
Like, there's not even like a trial or anything once it's done. He just wakes up and it sucks.
Yeah, it's really, really terrible. And we get from there to, is it Battle in Wakanda time now?
No, before then it's the Battle on Titan.
Battle on Titan, So
Nebula escapes in a cool moment where she like pops out part of her face, and then while the guy I can't tell if he's keeping her in check or he's just like weirdly molesting her or something.
I think he popped her all back.
Yeah, he put her back together. He rebuilt her.
Right, okay, but then he pops in the face aspect of her, and while he's doing that, she kind of does some sort of hold on him and like snaps his neck, and we don't really see the particulars of it, but we see her running off and like dragging herself back together and essentially ending up on Titan, or she asks the Guardians she gets in touch with the Guardians to go to Titan. Yeah. Which is, as you said, Thanos' destroyed homeworld.
Yep, and we get to Titan and we find out Thanos' whole motivation and his obsession with balance. But that's later on. But before that...
something amazing that I've missed out is the Iron Man, Spidey, Doctor Strange fight against
the rescue. Against Moore. Yeah, that was a really cool moment. I like that.
Just because it's another one of Spider-Man's like referencing quote unquote old classic movies, where he references aliens. So he basically, what's the word? Spaces Moore.
They space him. Yeah, they throw him out of a hole in the side of the ship.
Yeah, which is great.
Sucked out. Yeah, and that's really cool. I like that, and I like the interaction between Doc Strange and Tony Stark. I like that they're both two dueling egos, as it were.
I was fully expecting like a no shit Sherlock moment or something. I thought they'd make some sort of reference to it, which would have pulled you out of the movie. So I'm glad they didn't, but I was surprised that they didn't do that.
And they so they get to Titan, and the Guardians get to Titan, and the Guardians think that they crash land on Titan in this ship because they can't pilot it because they're not the right kind of size or whatever to pilot it effectively, so they're trying to pilot it themselves. They
do try and bootstrap like a Pacific Rim Evangelion style what do they call it, like symbiotic relationship thing where Spider-Man's got one arm in and Iron Man's got the other, and they just they're completely out of sync and they crash into the planet.
And when they've crash landed and people are treating Spider-Man like an intern, like an Avengers intern, like giving him the raw deal all the time, basically. They get crash land, and the Guardians turn up, and there's a bit of a altercation because the Guardians mistake the Avengers for members of Thanos' crew.
There's that misunderstanding.
Yeah,
and then Peter Quill takes his helmet off. He's like, "Who are you guys?" Yeah.
I'm from Missouri, not Earth, you know.
Well, yeah, like that part has one of my favourite exchanges in the whole film, where
the
it's
Drax
like,
bit, right?
Yeah, it's like, where is Gamora? It's like, who's Gamora?
I do you one better.
Why
Who's
is
Gamora? I do you one better. Why is Gamora? Yeah, that's great.
That's good writing.
And they're all so they all figure out that they're actually on the same side, and they try to figure out what they're going to do next to stop Thanos from getting the rest of the stones. There's only 2 left now, and that's the one in Vision's forehead and the one round Doctor Strange's neck, which is the time stone inside the Eye of Agamotto. So there's a lot of sitting around on Titan. Again, Ebony Maw and... Ebony Maw's dead now.
He's frozen in space.
Yeah, it is... We're getting back to Wakanda now again, aren't we? And we've got Proxima Midnight and Corvus... Well...
But actually, just before then, isn't it in this sequence, or because it keeps cutting back and forth, that Doctor Strange uses the Time Stone, the Eye Agamotto, to go into the future and see all the different possible outcomes. And out of the million, I think it's 1 something million, only one has them where Thanos loses.
Yeah.
I love the number that he picks out. It's 14,506. Which is like 14 million on one end and then 506 on the other. I thought that was a nice touch. But yeah, we see him meditating and like going through this weird Jacob's Ladder style process.
Yeah,
and determines that there's only one eventuality where Thanos loses.
Yeah,
which seems to indicate why he does what he does in this fight, where where he essentially gives up the stone to him.
Yeah,
after so much effort as well. Like I don't know if you guys, I have
after being the MVP. Right, because some of the stuff that he does is like some of the coolest stuff that happens in that fight.
Yeah, he does like ninjutsu and stuff, doesn't he?
Using the full extent of his powers and whatever. I really like it. And there's like some really frustrating moments because they've got a plan and they almost get the gauntlet off him, but then Peter Quill messes it up for everyone by being Peter Quill.
Yep.
And being a massive asshole.
This is the part of the movie that I hate the most. Because I'm on the cusp of appreciating it or like respecting it, because it's trying really hard to be this emotional moment where the emotion that Peter has, having learned that Gamora has been killed to retrieve the stone, like he's overcome by this, and it's supposed to be this grand thing where his like whatever's in his heart is bigger than I don't know, the fate of the universe. None of it doesn't really make sense. Like, I want it to work, but it just didn't work. It felt really flat, and it felt like a pissy teenager ruining the plot, like ruining all the work that they'd done. Because that fight is really cool, because there's so much happens. Like, it's beat after beat after beat after beat. Like,
it's full on also comic booky. It was like Spider-Man swinging around, Doctor Strange creating like teleporting holes for Peter Quill to jump through, and creating like steps, and Tony Stark like tossing things at like all of them just working in concert together in such a cool way.
And then Thanos like fucking drags the moon down on them.
Yeah. And they almost managed to get the gauntlet off him because they managed to like subdue him enough.
Yeah, that moon part was so Dragon Ball Z, it was badass.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. Also the shot of it, because like you see it in the background out of focus, and then he pulls his hand up towards it and you see it like almost like compress slightly, and you see these spots of action on it, and you see him like pull it apart and drag it down into the atmosphere. It's epic. I love that moment.
Yeah. So
and then very suddenly preceded by Peter Quill fucking things up because he can't keep his shit together.
And all of that goes to shit. Thanos lays the beat down. You think he's going to kill Iron Man. I'm sitting there on the edge of my seat like, do it. and then he doesn't.
I mean,
Because-
he kind of does. He stabs
Yeah.
him, but it doesn't mean much in the long run.
Yeah,
Like,
he puts some spandy foam in the hole.
Spandy foam, yeah.
And this is the thing. This is the moment, because I was assuming out of the people who I thought were going to die in this movie, he was one of them.
Yeah, I did.
And the way they were doing it, it wouldn't have felt cheap had he died. It would have felt like a good death
an
moment,
earned,
like
an
tragic,
earned death. Yeah,
but like it just an ultimate failure moment.
yeah,
So like, while I don't have an issue with what Doctor Strange did, just because I assume like he knows what he's doing because he went to the forward. So I don't have an issue with that, like the logic part. I'm not like, oh, why'd you do that, Stephen? It's more a case of like, it deflates it a bit because it's like it reminds you, oh, this is an MCU film and they want Tony's face to sell the next movie as well.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, that would have been a perfect moment to kill him. Like it felt great, and like the look on Stark's face, like and like the stuff that Thanos is saying.
I hope they remember you.
Yeah, they gave me the moment I wanted, and then they took it away from me so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did something else that irritates me even more. But that comes right at the very end of the film. So they get the Time Stone because Doc Strange agrees to relinquish it in exchange for Tony's life. Back on Earth, we've got this big old fight going on in Wakanda, where, as I was saying, it's I'm going to give him his movie name.
Well,
Cull Obsidian and the Proxima Midnight have turned up on Earth to retrieve the Mind Stone.
Well, the setup is they've taken Vision to Shuri, who's begun the process of extracting the Mind Stone from him. So that he's the ultimate goal inside, inside the palace or whatever it is, and all the troops are out in the field, protected by this dome. Yeah. And so the enemies are outside the dome trying to get in.
So we've got Wakandan tower defense going on.
Yeah, like the way it begins is pretty cool. Like the actual battle bit, because they start to like come into atmosphere because they do the whole thing, and I really like the interplay between Shuri and Banner, and it's like, why didn't you do this? And we didn't think about it, and I'm sure you tried your best.
Yeah, Shuri's smarter than all of them put together. She's like, awesome.
And I love how that you get the defense thingy, and then that first one drops, and then it's stopped by the dome, and Bucky just like, I love this place. I do love that moment.
Yeah, that was really good. The fight was really cool as well, and seeing everyone work together, all the different Wakandan tribes in unity.
In unity with the Secret Avengers as well, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
One thing I love about this battle is that we finally get to see a Marvel film where the bad guys are pretty clever, because they make themselves seem like they're just doing power by numbers, because you see them send down these ships and then force out all these like Zerg rush dog monster type things, and they start they're attacking the shield, but they can't get that many through, so the heroes can deal with them quite effectively. But then we see that the enemies are sending them round the sides to flank them, so T'Challa makes the decision to open up one panel of the dome, so you can at least have this filtered filtered stream of enemies to combat, which we think is the heroes being really smart, the enemies being dumb. But it's all this subterfuge because they've actually sent a guy in to infiltrate the palace where Shuri is working on Vision, and they're basically just biding their time until Wanda...
And pretending he's dead as well.
Yeah, they pretend he's dead, but actually Corvus Glaive isn't dead. He's gone in round the back to infiltrate the facility where they're trying their level best to remove the stone from Vision's head as quickly as possible so Scarlet Witch can destroy it without killing Vision. But
things on the field get so desperate that she has to leave his side, and she thinks she's doing this heroic but fairly safe moment of helping the troops on the ground, leaving Vision wide open. Yeah.
And Vision, basically, Shuri ends up having to cut the surgery short, so Vision Vision gets out of the building, and he's followed by one of the Dora Milaje, isn't he? Out of the building as well, because there's Dora Milaje in the building and outside. And And when they get back on, and then everyone's on the field then, and it's like a battle royale free-for-all, basically, because everyone's out, everyone's on the field, everyone's in play. And there's some really awesome epic moments, like where Scarlet Witch does the thing with the giant war machines.
Oh yeah, that's epic. Like they're rolling, decimating through the land. And what does she do? Like she grabs one and then throws it into the enemies, right?
Yeah, she picks them all up and then drops them on the enemies. Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then
also Hulk inside the Hulkbuster armor. That's kind of cool
because he can't turn into the Hulk because the Hulk won't come out because he's sad and angry that he got beaten. So he's wearing the Hulkbuster armor.
Sorry, I should say Bruce Banner in the Hulkbuster armor, not as the Hulk. Yeah,
and it's like being the Hulk, but without being the Hulk.
And we don't get a moment where they're on the edge of losing, right?
No,
like because we get the big heroes moment where Thor. The whole point of him making Stormbreaker was that's a weapon which has the capability to use the Bifrost to send him back to Earth without needing Heimdall. Yeah. So he comes in with Rocket and Groot and just like lays waste to all these enemies on the ground. Yeah. But it turns out like the heroes weren't in dire straits at that moment anyway, were they?
Yeah, it's going pretty well by that point. But then, but then Thanos turns.
There is a dramatic moment just before he appears.
Yeah.
But I can't remember exactly what happens. But there is a moment where they're not losing, but they're on the back foot. I think it's probably after those mechanical things have.
Yeah, it's when Thor turns up in it, and Thor.
And then he turns up, and they turn the tide again.
Yeah. So Thanos comes rocking back to Earth, before
the Thanos part, I've just got a few things to say about the sequence. And that's that there's elements that I love and elements that I hate. The elements that I love are, like we were saying, having the Avengers there, working with like the Wakandans and the different tribes there. Having M'Baku show up and his exchange with T'Challa is awesome. And all that stuff's cool. You get the cool line from the trailer about evacuate the city, engage all the fences, and get that man a shield. All that stuff is really cool. But then, like some of the fighting stuff is like seeing T'Challa and Cap fighting back to back is so cool. Like it's just awesome moments. But then, and as well, another favorite of mine is where it's Scarlet Witch, Black Widow, and Okoye fighting together. That is awesome. But then there's other bits where I hate the fact that they have what they call the Outriders or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we need another Chitauri-like beast. It's these faceless beasts. It's like, I hate that. And I know why they did it, because they wanted to have a big army fight, but it's so annoying. I would have rather it was just like they had to face each of the Black Order or something like that. I hate the fact that we just have these endless beasts. So you have bits where like people are like flying over and like dropping, like you've got War Machine and Falcon giving like air support and all that. But it's just so like blur. It's very big Marvel in like a boring way. Where like you do have these cool character moments, but then they have these like, big boring moments where it's just stuntmen facing CGI people, and that's boring. It's just visually not exciting. The way it's generally shot and edited isn't that exciting.
Not that engaging. Yeah. It's just selling the scale more than anything else. Isn't
it's a big fight.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know. It's not earned as being like a super hype. It's just not sold as being like what you would expect from a big fight like that.
Yeah. So Thanos has 5 stones now, and he just basically snaps himself to Earth, and he appears on the battlefield. After basically the heroes have turned the tide, Thor's done his thing. And then they're like, wait a second, something's coming. Thanos comes. He's here, and they're still basically, at this point, when he appears, Vision is like, look, you've just got to do it. Just destroy the stone. So you've got this whole, like, but I don't want to kill you type thing going on between Vision and Scarlet Witch. And then Scarlet Witch decides to get on with it. And you've got, like, this fight happening where they're having a fight that basically they're trying to keep Thanos busy until the stone can be destroyed. And she successfully manages to destroy the stone, but Thanos already has the time stone, so Thanos just reverses everything that's been done and gets the stone anyway.
I consider this an earned moment. I think that was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like, just seeing the sheer amount of effort that she had to put in, not only to, like, overcome the fact that she doesn't want to do this, like, she's killing somebody that she loves, but also the amount of effort it takes, like, physically, literally, to break the stone using her powers. And then she's trying to use both her hands to do it, and then she has to use one of her hands to, hold back Thanos, and eventually, through sheer force of will, she succeeds. And then he just he mocks her and says, this isn't the time, or something. Like, he says time in a weird way, and then you're like, oh shit, he's got the time stone, and then, like, rolls it all back. Yeah. And you get to see this horrible moment of, like, Vision's body, like, coming back together and reintegrating.
And this is
only for it to happen again.
Yeah. And this is where we learn just how broken the Infinity Gauntlet actually is. So, he's now got the Mind Stone as well. And it's just, like you were saying, that it's an earned moment, and it's the loss of hope that's been a sort of a theme through the whole thing, where you think they've got the upper hand, then all of a sudden all hope's just been ripped from under them again. Yeah,
also, there's a thing, like a trope in a lot of, like, sci-fi or comic stuff or anime, blah, blah, when, like, someone dies and they lose all the colour, and it's like, as the stone's ripped out, and Vision he's normally rocking a nice, like, purplish type look, and he just goes grey.
He does an Optimus Prime.
Yeah, pretty much,
So, Vision's had the stone took out of him, he's dead. Thanos has all the stones, and the only person able to stand up to him now is Thor. So you've got this fight between Thor and Thanos, and you actually think that Thor, for a second, has got the upper hand. Has succeeded in killing Thanos, and you've got this really great moment where Thor's pressing his axe into Thanos' chest. And he's like, delivering on a promise that he made earlier in the film, which is that Thanos would die for killing Loki. Oh yeah, we didn't mention Loki. Did we mention Loki got killed at the beginning?
We did. We mentioned it as briefly as the film mentioned it.
Yeah, he got choked out, big style. So we get to the point where we think Thor's beat Thanos, and then we remember that Thanos has got the Infinity Gauntlet and has got all the stones, and he clicks his fingers. And
with this epic line where he's like, "You should have gone for the head," or something along those lines.
That's what he says. He says, "You should have gone for the head." Yeah, it's exactly what he says. And he clicks his fingers, and for a moment, he's on what I believe to be the Soul Plane with Gamora, but it's Gamora as a child standing under an archway, and she just asks him, "Was it all worth it?" Yeah, what did it cost? Yeah, did you get what you wanted, and what did it cost? And he's like, everything. It cost everything. And then he's back, and we're transported back, and he's Well, this is the money shot of the movie. This is like everything that the movie's been culminating towards.
But like the gauntlet itself is now like spent. It's like the stone's still in it, but it's like crushed and broken.
Yeah.
And Thanos' arm is kind of like messed up as well as a result of the
Thor's
action
lightning.
He's just done. Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's from Thor's lightning or from the action of the gauntlet also. Being used up.
Using the most awesome power available in all reality. So he
Thor asks him what did you
do? Yeah. And it's not apparent yet that he's done anything. It's just apparent that he's reversed his own death, but he has done something. He teleports away, and then this is where there's another. This is another bit that irritates me. I mean, I like it, but it irritates me in what they do, because this is where Thanos' plan has come to fruition and he's won, which I like. I like that he's won. I like that they're ending the film on a bum note like that, because it's very Empire Strikes Back, and this is where people start to vanish, and we start to see who's gone and who's left behind following Thanos' universal cutting the population in half kind of thing, to restore the balance and supposedly save everyone. And we start to see people vanish. People start to just peel away.
Turn to dust.
Yeah,
as T'Challa foreshadowed, said everything will become blood and dust, or all that will be left is blood and dust, which comes true.
That's what happens, yeah. So, in my opinion, as you've got these like heartbreaking moments where people are watching other people turn to dust, and we lose all the interesting characters. All these characters they've invested time and money in, giving them their own solo movies and everything else, and building them up and making them instrumental in this film. Like, some of the most interesting parts of this film were due to the characters that we end up losing. and we're left with the, like, bog standard vanilla Avengers again by the end of the film.
Well, I have a theory about this, but should we get to that a little bit later? We can talk about who died and how, because I think there's some interesting choices here. Because, like, he clicks his fingers, everything goes white, and all the sound goes out of everything. And I think who's the first person we see go? Because is it Sam? Is it Falcon?
Is it Bucky?
Yes,
it's Bucky. Yeah,
it's definitely
stumbling towards Cap. Yeah,
yeah. So Bucky goes.
Bucky goes. We see, because the reason that Sam sticks in my mind is because I thought that was a really sad ending for him, because it's Rhodey shouting out his name,
looking
for him, but just like a few steps ahead of him, he's slumped on the floor and then turns to dust, and they'll never know where, like how and where he died.
And then Scarlet Witch is gone after that.
Yeah, Scarlet Witch, and you can see that it's almost like relief on her face because of everything she's had to go through.
Yeah, and then Black Panther.
T'Challa, yeah.
Oh, his moment is great because it's like he's reaching out. Like, you have no idea there's anything wrong with him. He's reaching out to Okoye, saying now's not the time to die, and we're assuming that it's her that's gonna be Ash.
And then the
camera turns around and he goes, and the look on her face is devastated. Like, she's lost her friend, she's lost her mentor, and she's lost her king. It's wild.
Yeah. And then
who else? Yeah, sorry.
Spider-Man.
Because I was going to say, because we're seeing it happen in two different places. We're seeing what happens on Earth in Wakanda, which is Bucky, Wanda, who else? T'Challa, Sam, and Groot as well.
Yeah, Groot
in Wakanda, whereas we see this weird relationship that Rocket has with Groot, because they're different ages now, and they have this weird father-son thing going on, and that's just heartbreaking. Yeah. And then we go to Titan. Yeah. And we see Drax and Mantis.
Other members of the Dora Milaje go as well, don't they? And things like that.
Yeah,
background.
Yeah, the Wakandans start to disappear, and we get that close up on M'Baku, who just looks like what's happening.
Yeah, and then we zip back to Titan, where we see pretty much all of the Guardians of the Galaxy go,
apart from she's not one of them, but
Nebula.
Yeah, Nebula.
Yeah,
because doesn't. Maybe it's before then when he says like why, and it's like I think in the scene before Tony says to Stephen, it's like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
And
here's the thing that annoys me, right? Here's the bit that pisses me off the most, is the fact that they choose Tony over Stephen, right? Because Stephen goes. And
it makes sense because he knew what he was getting into. It makes it more of this, makes it more of a sacrifice. Yeah, because he was the only one who knew how to make that decision, and he was willing to take it anyway.
Yeah,
he's playing the long con.
Yeah. But I would have liked to have seen Iron Man go and Doctor Strange stick around.
I don't after him not dying. There's no way in hell that he was just going to disintegrate after then. That was never going to happen because then it doubly undercuts that. But as you were touching on before, Peter, that one is the one that hurts because he's like, I don't feel too well, and it's like his one is gradual. Yeah. And he's like, I don't want to go.
I don't want to go.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what Iron Man's been trying to avoid this entire time. The entire film, he's trying to not let Peter follow him. He's trying to keep him on Earth. He's trying to keep him out of harm's way. And even throughout in Spider-Man Homecoming, he's trying to keep him at a distance because he doesn't want to get close to this kid.
Yeah.
And
because he doesn't want to be responsible for anything bad happening to him, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. And everything he feared comes to fruition, and all he can do is hold him as he disintegrates.
Yeah.
But that was perfectly written
bad.
to mess me up.
That pulled on the old heartstrings. That did that moment. But then we come to the very end of the film, where Thanos is getting to watch that sunrise that he talked about earlier in the film on a grateful universe because he's done his job. So he's going to sit down and have a cup of tea. And he walks out, He stands there, he's watching the sunrise, and he cracks a smile, roll end credits. Right?
Really, really somber end credits as well. Normally we get like...
An animation.
Animations or something, but it's just white
Names.
text on a black background.
Yeah. And it's great. It's great the way they did that. It really is. It's great. And it adds to the impact of that kind of ending. And as much as I think they could have had more balls in who they chose to save and who they chose to do away with, I think they had balls to do it that way round. Like to end a film on a note like that, like an utter hopelessness, all hope is lost. It's not even like an Empire ending, is it? Because at the end of Empire, everyone gets away and they've kind of got some kind of idea of what to do next, I guess.
Well, I have opinions on that, because at least Empire was its own closed story, but this, we know there's going to be a follow-up, and there's going to be consequences and something to do with, like, they're going to try and reverse it, they're going to try and save the world.
Yeah.
Which kind of undercuts the tension for me a little. I didn't really feel that heavy from it. I just liked all the individual moments. Like everybody's thing that they got to see.
Like, even if you forget the outside stuff that we know, which is like which movies are in production, forget that. And let's just, if we just deal with the film on its own terms, the way it's set up is that it's just brutally, it's not even a case of being obvious, it's a case of like, there's not really stakes there. Like, at least some of this is getting reversed. Like, there's just, and it removes the impact of it, because it's just a case of like,
you're almost expecting that to happen.
Yeah, now the question isn't like, oh my gosh, but now it's just a case of, so how are they going to fix this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what are they going to do to rectify it? And you were almost expecting that ending. Like, you went into the cinema knowing that this was going to be a movie where the hope is crushed.
Yeah. Then again, maybe that's us, because I was thinking about this on the way out, because I felt a touch disappointed, but I was thinking, any kids who went to see that, not knowing what the backstory is, not knowing, like, just generally what to expect, not knowing the meta, they would be devastated. And I could imagine if I was 10 years old now watching that movie, not having gone through stuff like Empire necessarily, that would have really hit me hard, I think. So for them, I'm really pleased in that way, for the generations who will have been affected by it, who won't
actually
have seen
get
it coming.
hit by it, actually take that, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was people in the cinema when I was there that aren't, that like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that like Marvel movies, that aren't necessarily as clued up or have read the comics or done the research or whatever that a lot of people seem to be doing these days. Like that would go into it and watch it and be like, what is this?
Yeah, there's bound to be. We're not the only market for this, so yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So there's going to be people that felt that way anyway, and it was an interesting ending in a nice end. It was a good end. I liked that ending. I thought that was great. The way that film ended I thought it was great. And the only as I say, the only criticism I have is
the choices.
The choices. Yeah.
What did you guys think of the post-credit scene?
Well, I wanted to get onto that because the way I love that. Well, I hated the fact that there wasn't a mid-credit scene like there normally is, and all we get is this credit scene at the end where we see Maria Hill and Nick Fury in a car. There's some sort of there's a car crash, and they come out and they're trying to deal with it, and we're unclear whether it's happened, because normally the post-credit scenes happen a lot after the events of the movie, right? And so we're, in my head at least, I was assuming, this must be, further down the line, and cool, Nick Fury and Maria Hill are dealing with the consequences of everything that's happened with Thanos, maybe a year or two down the line. But we realize it's immediately during the ending, like it's almost a continuation of that same scene that we ended on.
Happening while something else is happening, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's concurrent to the ending of the movie, and so we see Hill get ashed, and then we see Nick Fury trying to frantically get out his pager and do something on it before he slowly gets ashed, and his famous catchphrase from Samuel L. Jackson's entire catalog from his career gets cut off short because he gets ashed halfway through it. And then this pager drops, and you're thinking, he's got a pager, what's the deal with this? And then it says dialing, contacting, and we get to see the insignia for for Carol Danvers pop up on the screen.
Yes.
And it cuts to black. I thought that was fantastic.
Captain Marvel.
It was so good.
That was
Captain
great.
Marvel, yeah.
Also, like, that ending gave me, like, shades of, like, Leftovers.
Yes, with the car crash and
Yeah, because the helicopter crashed into the building. It's just like, it also made me think a bit of Why the Last Man, where it's like, if like half of the population just disappeared in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, what
like
would
the
happen?
consequences of it. So I'm happy we jumped into a city to see it and not just we're in Wakanda or on Titan.
That's actually dealt with pretty well in the comics as well, when you see some of what's going on in the city when half of everyone's gone. So that's pretty good. I like that. And I don't know, there's something in the credits that bothered me. I don't know if you guys be able to clear it up for me, but apparently an Arrested Development character turns up in the film. Because there's like credits for an Arrested Development character.
Yeah,
I saw this afterwards,
It's during the collector part, isn't it, on Nowhere? Where it's, what's his name again? The analrapist, Tobias Finke, Blue Man.
Oh, right, I missed that. I completely missed that.
I didn't see it, but I caught it afterwards. I was reading about it online.
Yeah, he's the Howard the Duck of this movie.
I just saw it in the credits and completely missed it. I was like, where's the Arrested Development nod?
See, I didn't catch that in the credits because I was too busy angry tweeting Leon about the dude sat behind me. Which I know is cardinal sin of taking my fan out at the cinema, but everyone else is doing it, so it's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, so all in all, I guess we all three of us enjoyed it, right?
Oh yeah, definitely looking forward to the next one. But that's the thing. It's always like the sweet treat like laid out in front of me. Like even if I don't want it, I'm gonna have to take it.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, it's there and it's great. It's a good film. It's a good popcorn movie. It's good action. It's nice to see these characters on the big screen. Like I keep saying, it's good. It's good to see them on the big screen, and it's good to see. I like finally seeing Thanos get some proper time on the screen, and finally seeing Thanos get to be a bad guy. I mean, this is for me. This is Thanos with softer, rounder edges. This is like baby-proof Thanos. It's Thanos,
which I don't mind. I like that he's not just a one-dimensional character, because I don't know. I don't have that allegiance from the comics, but I like that he had some softness to him, and more than that, like I like that they sold how imposing he is. You know, there's lots of shots of him handing things over to people, or his hand compared to somebody else's, and you see just how massive
absolutely massive he is. Yeah, he's huge.
Like him handing over the dagger to Gamora, and it's like puny in his hand, but it's normal sized in hers, and they sell that scale and strength really well. Yeah,
and it's really good how that works. I do like that, and all in all, it was a great film. So yeah, overall. Good film, great watch. Can't wait for what happens next. Can't wait for the Carol Danvers movie when that drops. That's going to be really cool. Predictions, I think that's going to be where they introduce Adam Warlock, and I think because she will be leading the charge against Thanos, because she'll be one of the only people able to stand up to him. And I guess that brings us to a close.
Well, can I bring up one thing, because I've been not wanting to bring it up until the end. You were saying you were disappointed by them not killing off, like, Iron Man, for example.
Yeah.
My theory is they've left behind all the old guard, because, like, the people who are still alive are, like, Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, Rhodey, and Captain America, and Thor.
Black Widow as well, I believe.
Black Widow, yeah. So I think they're going to do something where they flip it, so all the people who died, maybe, like...
This is the feeling I was getting, because I thought, like, there's... sorry to cut in. The only reason for two of the people who I thought should or possibly die in this movie, Cap and Iron Man, to still be alive after all this, is for a trade flip type thing.
Yeah. I think that's what it's gonna. That's what it's gonna be in the next one.
There's gonna be like the new Avengers or something, and it's gonna be Stephen Strange, Spider-Man, and Black Panther or whatever. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it, and I guess we should bring it to a close now. So that has been Ace Comicals number 34. That has been Infinity Talk, and you can find us at www.acecomicals.com. You can find us on WordPress, which is acecomicals.wordpress.com. You can find us on Facebook under Ace Comicals. You can find us on Twitter at Ace Comicals. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, TuneIn, Castro, and now Spotify as well. So we're on iTunes and Spotify, so look us up on Spotify and you can check us out there. You can find me on Twitter at Batto, that's Battou, and if you have a question for the cast, you can send it to the Twitter feed or to we send it to the Ace Comicals Twitter feed. You can DM it, or you can send it to me and DM it to me, or you can send it to the Ace Comicals email address, which is acecomicals.gmail.com. We will answer questions on sort of like the next couple of shows. Yeah, so Ray, where can we find you?
Yeah, on Twitter at Monkeh, so that's at MOONKEH.
And Leon, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter as well at Leon Everett.
So that has been Ace Comicals. Thanks very much for listening. Ace Comicals, over and out.